Thank you so much for inviting us, Stella, to come and present to you. Some of you have heard some of our previous accessible gardening presentations, and you'll get to get a little bit of a review from that. But we have some new information for you and some new ways of looking at things. So thank you for joining us. In addition to our passion for gardening, Bev and I also are deeply committed to health and wellness. And that's what inspired us to begin the accessible gardening programs that we now have implemented here with the Master Gardeners. And we're going to be talking about today. So we've been involved with this program for over 4 years. So we're going to talk about, as Ignacio's fixing this, we're going to talk about a program overview and tell you what we've done over the past 4 years with the help of lots of different Master Gardeners. And then we're going to do a little audience participation so that you can kind of get an idea of, kind of get an idea of where you might stand on an accessibility awareness scale. And then we're going to talk about our new concept, which is accessible gardening teams. And then hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. So our project goal was to be able to create both resources and models so that people could learn about accessible gardening. And then they could take that information, whether it's the information we have online or our handouts or the models that we have in a Spirited Garden, and take them back to their own homes so that they can make their own gardens accessible, or take them to the community gardens that they're participating in and help to make those more accessible. So we had a vision, and in our vision, we truly believe that everyone, with careful planning, can continue to enjoy the benefits of gardening throughout their lifetime. So we want to share our secret with you this morning. Once you apply accessibility options to put your research-based information into practice, you can open up a whole new world of gardening and whole new populations. You already either know or have access to research-based gardening practices. So all you need to do is learn a couple of adaptability and accessibility options. So what I wanted to do first was show you a little bit about what options are probably already out there that you may have considered to be accessible gardening options. Let's start with home. So you may just simply put up a container up on a retaining wall and be able to plant with that to make that accessible. And you can watch your herbs grow and play with your puppies out in the backyard. You can also get a little bit more in depth and make actually create an accessible garden where you can go up to it and have the soil at a height that you can work with. Or you can put your artistic creative juices to work and create gardens of all different flavors and types that you can pull a chair up to and enjoy your garden, flowers and vegetables. So let's look at a couple of our gardens that we have right now and look at the accessibility options that are already there. Our rose garden, our beautiful, beautiful rose garden. So first of all, anybody who's worked in the rose garden has flipped over a bucket. That's an accessible gardening option. You don't have to get fancy. It puts you right at the height to be able to prune the roses. You can even use terraced walls, so you can stand at the bottom of a terraced wall and be able to reach up and bend the soil to also appreciate the roses. Have trouble with ambulation? No problem. There's lots of accessible ramps at the rose garden. Have trouble with vision? No problem. We've got specially marked rails on some of the ramps. Tools? We got plenty of tools, from cleanup tools to gardening tools that are already there that are all making the garden more accessible. We even have emotional issues covered. Feeling lonely or sad? We can share bread from the inside, and you can sit and reflect in the beautiful garden. So lots and lots of accessibility options that we never really labeled that way. Deb's going to walk us through a couple of the other gardens and then talk about some of the things that we have created as part of the program.
Okay. So even our big old AgriLife garden has some accessible gardening features. Most of our raised beds are 3 cinder blocks high. This height is back saving and can also provide a place to sit while tending your plants. Sitting areas for resting Like this old park bench within your garden area is a huge benefit. We also have several chairs for our breaks and seating areas in shade and sun depending on the season. All of our raised beds, our in-ground garden area are watered via automated irrigation, reducing task load and memory challenges. Did we water the raised beds today? Besides our grand old grapevine being a trellis, we trellis, stake, and cage most all of our veggies now at the AgriLife Garden, making tending, managing, and harvesting much easier. We have firm pathways between all of our raised beds for safe ambulatory navigation. And many of us at the garden use tools that improve our plant and soil tending tasks like mini hula hoops, hand rakes, and even simple handmade weeding tools for getting into tight places around plants. And we recently added a set of sturdy made steps to allow some of us who are not as physically able to get up onto and down from the raised beds as needed to harvest clear beds and work the soil. The Xeriscape garden also has its own accessible gardening features, like this beautiful old post caddy, garden carts to minimize lifting and carrying. But did you know that carts like these are also useful for planning materials for the next task or project needing to be done? The Xeriscape garden also has beautiful brick raised beds, well-planned walkways, shaded areas, a tranquil environment to decompress and relax, and great opportunities to learn about native plants via their plant labels. As Penny mentioned earlier, we have been actively working on our accessible garden for life program for almost 5 years now, a project that we had talked about doing for years before we actually got started. So far, we have broadened our outreach on many levels. Since we started this program, we have worked with the Adult Outreach Committee via the Speakers Bureau, presenting educational events both in person and virtually. We have supplied well-developed resources for the information table committee boxes, consisting of flip charts, handouts, and posters to be available for their info table events. Via the social media committee, we developed the Accessible Gardening Learn Garden Topics category on our Master Gardener webpage, created many posts on accessible gardening for our Master Gardener Facebook page, as well as an Accessible Gardening for Life video on our El Paso County Master Gardeners YouTube channel that continues to gain views and shares. Via the help desk, we continue to make community contacts, answer questions, and have provided an accessible gardening information notebook for the help desk for easy reference. Through the Resource and Reference Committee, funding has been generated through donations and grants to help purchase demonstration tools for our presentations and help cover the costs for the construction of the Ascarity Teaching and Demonstration Garden's own accessible garden. One last thing to note. The Accessible Garden for Life program is currently one of the 2 2021 El Paso County Master Gardener Texas State Award submissions. We thank the awards committee for all their great help with that application. Over the first 15 to 18 months, most of the developing of this program, we explored the universe, well, almost, and found lots of solid research references and resources on health benefits of gardening, gardening techniques, tasks for persons with a wide range of challenges from physical to cognitive, and the philosophy behind developing accessible gardening opportunities and programs. From this extensive research, we developed our handouts, tools, info table, displays, and posters, and presentations. Let's take a quick look at those. You saw the picture of our notebook, right? Yeah. Everybody saw that? We created a variety of handouts on health benefits of gardening, general accessible gardening info and design, tools available, safety precautions, resources for developing compliant community accessible gardens, and we have resources on file targeting gardening for seniors, diagnosis-focused tips for arthritis, visual, or breathing issues as examples, types of gardens, and gardening for nursing homes. We have acquired a good inventory of commercially made and handmade demonstration tools to show what can still be accomplished in the garden with a limited physical ability and the right tools. Our information tables are a perfect place to bring accessible gardening information to the public. We have tabletop displays in each of the information boxes highlighting various aspects of accessible gardening, like the benefits it provides, gardening with a trellis, and adaptive tools. Many people are struggling with physical, cognitive, and emotional issues that are not readily apparent. They or the folks they care about may be very grateful for this information. Please find room on your tables for this small but fact-filled display. You may be very surprised by the questions you will get, maybe even from our own Master Gardeners. Early in the development of our Accessible Gardening for Life program, we created indoor and outdoor gardening activities, posters. We want folks to know that gardening is not just fun, but it's limited, and it's not just limited to the outdoors. And last, but certainly not least, our presentations. PowerPoint presentations can be used or modified for the special interests and available time of any group. For example, the presentation we gave for Bell County Master Gardeners, that was a CEU. CEU classes we've given here for our own association, home shows, VA foster homes, and even on a Eventbrite. We also have, again, our YouTube video presentation that is still being viewed and shared over and over. And we also can do presentations at farmers markets, information table events, and senior community informal presentations. A joy of our Accessible Gardening for Life program was the creation of the Ascarity Teaching and Demonstration Gardens on Accessible Garden. The purpose was to educate and demonstrate accessible gardening options by doing this with their own accessible garden, raised beds, irrigation, design, and build, labeled garden beds, handouts on a wide variety of topics available to visitors upon request, the bulletin board within the accessible garden area, providing more information on accessible gardening and general information about gardening, wheelchair-friendly paths, and the beautiful welcoming sign.
So our current focus is on providing accessible gardening information to our senior population. And we did this because we thought that this was a population where people were newly discovering challenges, and it would be a great place to start. But all of the techniques that we have can also be applicable to all ages. As we age, most of us start to experience some physical challenges. The key to be able to remain healthy gardeners is to be able to know what our attitudes are and our chosen behaviors with regards to our challenges. Seniors deal with this in a number of different ways. We would like to do a little activity right now to see how the folks in this audience might be dealing with accessibility issues.
We don't have any seniors here.
So let's pretend like there's some seniors in the audience. You can envision your parents. And what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of run you through 5 examples of different levels of awareness of where we are physically and what we're doing to be able to maximize our healthy gardening. Do remember that these challenges that we're talking about right now are just physical challenges, but we can also help folks deal with cognitive challenges and emotional challenges as well. So I'm going to describe 5 ways senior gardeners may deal with this. So if you're willing to stand up and participate, stand up now. You may see yourself in more than one of these descriptions, but if you're already seated, I'm going to ask you to listen to the descriptions, and then if it applies to you, sit down. So more than one of these may apply to you, but just stay seated if you've already been seated. Okay. The perfect specimen gardener. We have it all here, right? Okay, so this is the description. I actually have Ignacio kind of, yeah. All right, this is you. They're either really young or really fit. They truly do not have any injuries and can work in the garden for long hours, doing any task without feeling any pain or any discomfort. Their motto is, I can do anything safely, and they are right, at least for the time being. If this is you, please sit down.
Right.
If you have no physical issues that impact your gardening, which there probably are some here, please sit down. Okay, our next is the bulletproof superhero. I actually had Ignacio in mind when I wrote this one. These are folks that regardless of what they know or might suspect, they still insist on performing gardening tasks as if they are 20 years old. These gardeners leap tall chain link fences, sit for hours pulling weeds, and shovel dirt like there's no tomorrow. They may wake up in the morning hobbling out of bed with sore backs or aching knees, and they may not, or they may wonder how that bulletproof thing was working out for them. Their motto is, I am great now. What could possibly go wrong? If this applies to you, sit down. Or gently tap your neighbor on the shoulder. Okay. Next we have the rationalizer. Rationalizers may have been bulletproofers in an earlier period of time, but they now realize that they do have some challenges. They know what might set off an aching back, sore knees, or throbbing hand joints because it has happened before, and sometimes many times before, when they perform certain tasks in certain ways. They may even try new ways of doing things in an effort to avoid problems. Often, the new way does work if they only do it for short periods of time. But in spite of the first signs that they may be overdoing it and will pay for it later, they continue. Their motto is, it's just a small task. I will power through it. If this is you, sit down.
That's your memory.
Rex already told me he's stubborn, so I'm not even gonna, I'm gonna look right through him. All right, our fourth category is the non-believer. These folks recognize their new limitations, but they don't know any alternative forms of gardening that they can still enjoy. They often become depressed and lonely, and they miss seeing their gardening buddies and doing their gardening activities. Their motto is, and I hear somebody on back there, poor me, I'll never be able to garden again. If this is you, sit down. And finally, we have the realist. So for those of you standing up, you're probably realists. So big round of applause for our realists. Let me tell you about a realist. Either you're knee-deep in denial or you're a realist. A realist recognizes that there are new limitations, but embraces the challenge of finding alternative techniques and ways of doing things that will allow them to continue to safely garden. So wherever you might fall in these categories, it's helpful to move to this realist phase and to know how to employ accessible gardening principles for both physical, cognitive, and emotional challenges. In addition, we hope that this planted a couple of little seeds in your head, not only for you, but for other people that you may know. And when you're at the information tables or presenting to seniors, to be able to recognize that we're not the only ones going through those stages and phases, that there are other folks that are as well. So thank you for participating in that. Let's just talk about some of the benefits of gardening. Of course, there are physical benefits, so we're going to call this just keep moving. The CDC recommends that we get 2.5 hours of moderate level activity per week, and gardening is included in those activity hours. Also, if there's some research to show that if you get dirt under your fingernails, you build up your immune system, which seems to be particularly important in this day and time. So intuitively, we know that gardening can help with coordination, strength, flexibility, and increasing our stamina. One of the other benefits is cognitive or thinking benefits. So we're going to call this just thinking. Think about how much thinking is really involved in gardening. From the inception stage to the creating stage, to the doing stage, to the remembering stage, all of those things are required to be able to successfully garden. Gardening also helps us provide a healthy workout for our brains. Remember the old days where we said, I won't say where people said that they were killing brain cells? Oh, we're killing our brain cells if we have a brain. Remember that? And the theory was that, once the brain cell was killed, you had this many brain cells that, if you started losing them, started losing them. Well, they have found in research that that's no longer true, that we can actually regenerate nerve fibers within the brain. And gardening, they did a study with a group of elderly people who participated in a vegetable garden program and were able to quantify that they were actually building new nerve fiber growth within their brains. Drinking more water. And we all benefit by becoming lifelong learners. So there's always something new to learn about gardening. So cognitive benefits to keep thinking. And finally, there are emotional benefits of gardening. Are y'all familiar with the Blue Zone research? It has targeted populations that have, exceptionally long longevity, and they kind of did some research to find out what propelled these folks to be able to live for a long time and to be healthy. And they found that gardening and connection to nature was one of the big items that helped them to stay active. Gardening can also decrease the severity of depression. For people with dementia, they found that even simple indoor gardening tasks improve sleep, reduce agitation, and increase cognition. And it also restores our faith in the future. So when someone plants a seed, they have faith that it will continue to grow. And so this same theory helps to spread that same kind of faith and hope into everyday life. Physical, cognitive, and emotional benefits. So you saw this slide earlier. Again, Bev and I have worked on this project for quite a while. In conjunction with many people in this organization, we're thankful for the opportunity to be able to do that. We really feel like at this point, we have the models and the resources for us to apply accessible gardening action and education to everybody in the community. And so for the final portion of this program, we wanted to introduce a concept that may be interesting to some of you, and that's accessible gardening teams. That being said, I know that there are tons of things going on in Master Gardeners, and lots of activities, and each of us only have a limited amount of time to actually devote to our love of gardening and our love of the association. So what Bev and I are going to present today are just some options, and if you're interested in possibly becoming part of an accessible gardening team at this point in time, this would be an opportunity to do that, or perhaps if not, then in a future date to be able to maybe participate in teams. So I thank you for listening to the concept that Bev is going to describe and thinking about whether you would like to be part of it.
Well, kind of to repeat what Penny said, we are at a point in our program that we can grow and expand our research, or let it stay as it is and see where it goes from there. Penny and I would like to see it grow and go further, but we can't do it by ourselves, and we don't feel like we should. If accessible gardening touches something inside you because of a family member, a friend, or a group you know that you would like to help, then consider becoming an Accessible Gardening for Life team member. There are some potential audiences that our Accessible Gardening for Life program can reach out to, like senior living communities, nursing homes, rehabilitation centers, senior centers, support groups, and community clubs. There are many more. Accessible Gardening for Life programs provide opportunities for not only seniors to enjoy, but also for anyone with physical, cognitive, and emotional issues, regardless of their age. All of these audiences often lack the knowledge to create these accessible gardening opportunities for their residents or members. Our premise is that it takes a cheerleader, a game motivator, to build a sustainable garden. What better cheerleader than a master gardener? Strong personal connections between employees in a senior living community and a master gardener team is the best way to provide individualized education and develop strong gardening programs. Teams fulfill our mission of providing research-based education and get the personal rewards of seeing the benefits of their actions in the faces of the residents and employees of the community. Penny and I have had the pleasure of working with 2 senior living communities to develop their accessible gardening programs. Royal Estates Assisted Living was our first community. During our initial visit, we presented the short version of our Accessible Gardening for Life PowerPoint presentation and completed an activity by assisting each resident to create and care for their own container of succulents. I want to also include that Helen Abrish also helped us with this event. One of the residents who participated loved her plant so much that she kissed it and lovingly named her plant George. All of the residents who attended were delighted and asked us to come back. So our second event at Royal Estates was Holiday Balls, which included a short PowerPoint presentation with a hands-on activity. We informally incorporated accessible gardening education into both of our activities for the benefit of the residents and the ongoing education of the staff regarding best practices for successful gardening in El Paso. Our second community was the Good Life Senior Living, and we were invited there. They already had 2 raised garden beds, but had no success in their gardening attempts. Our educational activity consisted of assisting residents and staff, showing them how to prepare the beds and how to plant cool season flowers. We also provided information on plant care and frost protocols. Again, the staff and residents were delighted with our information and asked if we could return in the spring with a vegetable gardening activity.
So each of our groups, we came up with a learning plan, and we put some things in writing to the person who's in charge to be able to describe what we were going to do after we talked about it, and be able to list out the materials and the supplies that they needed to supply, and what, if anything, we were going to supply, and kind of what would happen during that stage. We also gave them notebooks. So we put in all of our accessible gardening handouts, and then handouts and information specific to the task that they were doing, in the hopes that at some point in time, maybe they wouldn't need a cheerleader as much, and we could just go back and reference the material that they had in their notebooks. And then we had fun times. So this was where we got to actually meet the residents, talk with them, and really enjoy what we are teaching them. When the activity was over, we asked, we had little sheets of paper and asked people what they liked, how we might be able to improve, and then probably the most important, what they'd like to hear about next, to be able to plan our next sessions.
What's next? We welcome your ideas and potential contacts. Come see us if you are interested in becoming a part of the Accessible Gardening team. And visit our Accessible Gardening for Life Learn Garden Topics category found on the Paso County Master Gardeners website for more information. When life became too frenzied, she came to the garden and whispered to the plants until she smiled and her mind was calm. Vision with action makes a powerful reality. We hope our vision and your action will provide and produce that powerful reality. Remember, you don't have to stop gardening when you get old. You get old when you stop gardening. Thank you. Questions?
Okay, well, thank you again so much for listening and for passing along the information, and hope to hear from somebody